it's very tragic that Indian classical music and much of the Indian classical performing arts has really been marginalized in the media. And I think it's because India's going through this kind of, you know, transition into what they view as a global cultural space, and is very insecure about a lot of things. So a lot of people are just trying to be global, and in the process are sort of shunning almost, you know, the Indian classical arts and Indian culture, and so that gets reflected in the media, and so spaces are getting less and less. You know, you'll find obituaries of Michael Jackson when he died, taking over most of the electronic and print media, whereas when I remember around the same time Ali Akbar Khan died, and there was really, I don't even think it made the front page of a lot of papers. So that to me is really quite frightening, because unless people, you know, the media does inform a lot of opinion, and so people start thinking that he wasn't that important, and he actually was. He was monumental. For me, one of the biggest things that will bring it, bring it into the mainstream and make it sustainable is by intervening and creating a kind of a whole new generation of thoughtful listeners, of discerning listeners, which doesn't, by the way, necessarily mean that they all have to be great performers or connoisseurs, but they just have to have a sensitivity and a sensibility for that kind of music. And for that, you need to have it in your ambient noise, in your ambient environment, far more. So, for example, if you put on the radio early in the morning, there should be some early morning rag playing. And if you sometimes switch on the TV and channel surf, you should be able to like come across an interview, an old interview of Bhimsen Joshi. In schools, I mean, I have this dream that schools should all play one short morning rag, maybe not every day, but once a week, just so that sound kind of enters people's bloodstream in a way. And then they learn to respond to it, and not just to that sound, but actually it informs the way they view the world. Because this is really part of a much larger kind of a cultural structure, which is where we all come from. So right now there's a lot of dissonance in our lives, and I think it's very evident in what you see around, because there's so much schizophrenia between where we come from, what we're trying to be, who we are today. It's all kind of chaotic, and I think that if you are comfortable with where you come from, it can really help you be more comfortable with who you become. So that is something that it's much more than music is just a medium for that. It can be through any of the arts, and that's why I feel like it's absolutely imperative for every child to learn a performing art, preferably an Indian Indian one. Because it's really not about you becoming a performer, but about you having the sensibility of appreciating not just that art, but all the related, because you see in Indian culture, everything's very interconnected. So whether it's dance, painting, sculpture, music, architecture, thought, it's a very circular kind of a thought process, and we're moving towards a very linear, rationalist one. And that can really be go against one's, what I like to call collective consciousness. Because there is such a thing. We don't only exist on this one plane, and so these are things that are, to my mind, very obvious, and it's just quite idiotic that it's not being brought into our lives in a more natural, organic way. For example, yoga, and maybe it'll just happen. Maybe it needs some amazing thing to come about, like the way Ravi Shankar kind of made music, Indian classical music, into a global phenomenon. Maybe we need some sort of intervention like that. And I'll give you an example. Books for a long time in India were really marginalized, and there were no books pages, and everybody thought books were for that very sort of intellectual elite. And suddenly it's become the most aspirational, wonderful space to be in, and everyone's flocking to book festivals all over the country, and they're sprouting up as we speak, So maybe something like that needs to happen in the music space, which somehow engages this new, modern, kind of slightly, uh, slightly dissonant space of people and bring them in.